We began to like him and acquire the taste for him because he developed more and more character and more color, and there was humor. There was great humor there with Dave. His wit.
Dave was doing his shit back then too. I remember he was doing that. He was all decked out and dressed up. He had a cane that he was prancing around on stage. I mean, he was bad then. I mean, Dave was a dude.
I gotta hand it to him. He was rather unique. I mean, he wore clothes that people would never even think of wearing. He would wear skin-tight pants that he would find in Hollywood. You know, Hollywood at that time for us was like, oh my God, Hollywood.
Dave was the frontman to which all other frontmen were measured against. And some people will say the only bad thing about Dave is, well, his range isn't that good. He's not the greatest singer. Well, I don't really care. I just love his voice. His voice sounds cool.
Dave, to me, is, the greatest entertainer that ever lived, I mean, he knew how to stroke the audience. He still does.
The change came the moment that Roth joined the band. We figured we needed a new name, and it was Roth's idea. And he said, look, Van Halen sounds nice, it's different, it's your last name, and it can be a good band name. And so we decided to go with that.
Dave knew right away Edward and Alex were going, they weren't going to back off. And they were awesome musicians. And they had the attitude that, Pasadena is the first stop.
I remember at that time going around Pasadena and I was like famous, everybody knew me. They'd always be trying to give us booze and drugs and stuff. It was pretty nuts.
Somebody would have the balls to host a party at their house. And you'd send out flyers and you'd invite as many people as you could.
Well, they were pretty legendary, really. Back then, there was a lot of them, though. People don't seem to do that anymore, but every weekend there'd be 3 or 4. There'd be a band playing, or, you'd pay $1 to get in, there'd be a keg. I don't know how. It was pretty loose as far as that goes. But if Van Halen were playing, you'd go over there and there'd be 2,000 people, in the backyard.
When the weekend came around, you pretty much wanted to know if Van Halen was playing everywhere, when Van Halen played, there would be a lot of girls.
They would always try to make the band wait as long as possible because we knew that once the band started, that's when the countdown began. Band started playing. We don't know when, but we know the police are going to show up sooner or later.
As the parties got bigger and bigger, I mean, eventually they became these massive swarms of people. Cars lined up for miles and, bodies all over the street and everybody trying to get in. We might get an hour or 2 out of it and the cops are going to be there, and you look up and the helicopters are coming in with the spotlights and there's police cars blocking off the street.
Cops came and busted it. There was many cop cars there. The officer told me, this party is so loud and so big. There's so many people in the street and all these cars. We were looking for the party 4 blocks down.
I remember one party where outside it got out of hand, and I think somebody actually got shot with a shotgun. It was nuts.
If it's your life and your lifestyle, where do you want to eventually end up? Hollywood.
They started playing Hollywood, really. Dave was very ambitious, so he knew if you want to get seen by somebody important, you got to play Hollywood, so they kind of focused on that after a while.
Early in 1974, Van Halen scored a coveted residency at the rock club Gazzarri's, located on the Sunset Strip in West Hollywood. Landing this gig helped catapult the band out of Pasadena's backyard beer bashes and thrust them headfirst into Tinseltown.
We almost became like the house band. And it was funny because after all the years that we played there, I could never figure out why Bill Gazzarri called Dave Van. You'd say, hey, Van, it's a couple extra dollars for you. He never knew that his name was Dave. He thought his name was Van Halen, like in Van Morrison.
Gazzarri's was almost its own island, its own scene. No pro bands played at Gazzarri's in any context. It was basically a place for young amateur bands to start out and really try and build their chops and build their talent.
Mark Stone was a good bass player, Listen to those tapes I've got. He's got some pretty good chops.
Mark, good bass player, just not where his road was leading.
I was a straight-A student in school and doing the band, and I was like split between these two things, and basically I just couldn't keep up with them. In actuality, we met one day and they actually asked me to leave.
The reason that we had to let Mark go was that it seemed that his interests were elsewhere than music.
For a long time, it really hurt. You know, it was tough. It was tough leaving that band. You know, because I knew they were destined for greatness. You know, and it's just like they say, you know, don't leave before the miracle happens, and I did.
The years after high school, from high school to getting discovered, was where everybody tested their mettle. Because to a lot of people, you know, that was the end of the fun road. Now the hard work began. As the years go on, you have to kind of choose which direction you're going to go in. And I think that Edward and Alex knew where they were going. Mike Anthony was in a group called Snake. He's a great singer as well.
Mike was going to Pasadena College, and I know that he would run into either Alex and Dave, I think. You know, I don't think he actually really knew them, but he knew of them.
I'll never forget the night we went to see Mike and his band Snake over at Pasadena High School in the auditorium, and things started happening right then.
We were doing a show at a place called Pasadena High School. And lo and behold, the PA blows up. Into the picture steps Michael Anthony, whose band named Snake has a PA, and he offered us the use of his PA.
After we got done, Eddie came out and he said, "Dude, where'd you get that bass player, man? Does that fucking guy play guitar?" And I said, "Yeah, he doesn't play guitar, but I mean, he could pick it up and play it." I said, "Damn, he is fucking good." He tripped out on Mike, he dug him. He did. I remember he was doing finals in school, and then he called me because he goes, "You know what, I want to talk to you. Let's meet up at the rehearsal room." He goes, "Tony, I want you to listen to this." And I listened to it, and I remember it had 4 cuts on it. It had "Take Your Whiskey Home" on it too, back then. And I was blown away. I was like, this is unreal shit, unreal. And Mike was like, "Dude, they're hitting me up to play in the band. What do you think?" I go, "What are you asking me what the fuck I think for? You got to do what you got to do."
And they asked him to audition, and they auditioned him one time and immediately asked him for the job, and he took it.
They kind of took the few pieces and put them together of the puzzle, and bam.
There was just a whole new presentation. I mean, all of a sudden, it was like, you know, front man. It was a real rock and roll band.
They started playing immediately because Mike was so fucking good. I mean, what the hell did he have to learn? He knew everything, you know? And then getting with them, can you imagine? It was great.
Mike was wearing that gold glitter outfit, making a big debut. And it was wild. Ed was wearing a cape. They were pretty wild. They were in the driveway playing this backyard party, and they sounded great, you know. I thought, wow, he's great. Mike is perfect.
Rapidly building a following, Van Halen strutted their stuff throughout Pasadena and Los Angeles. The band's repertoire was eclectic, to say the least.
They knew 300 songs, other people's songs, and at first they would only play all the covers. Get Down Tonight by Casey and the Sunshine Band, you know, Aerosmith songs, Zeppelin, ZZ Top, and they would slowly work their own originals in. Running with the Devil, DOA, House of Pain, really old stuff.
That's one thing too about Van Halen. They would kick your ass with a fucking outrageous copy, and then they'd throw their shit in, you know what I mean, and mix it up.
After Gazzarri's, it was like every other club. Say you have like top 40 stuff that you play. KC, we did a couple of those. That's the kind of stuff to get into the club. Then after that, you start edging in your own original stuff.
Eddie said that it never sounded just like the band they were playing, and it was kind of frustrating because it always had the Van Halen sound, which was really probably a good thing.
Van Halen personified a certain kind of California culture. If you know California, if you live here and you know what California looks and sounds and feels and smells like, all of that was captured in Van Halen's music.
They were local boys, so obviously we were rooting for them. And I'd seen them like at Troubadour and places in Pasadena.
In Pasadena, everyone knew about them, but they decided they were going to take it up a notch.
Finally, we did a show at a place called Golden West Ballroom in Norwalk, California, with a UFO. Rodney Bingenheimer was the big MC.
Let's welcome, if you will, from Pasadena, ladies and gentlemen.